back to Girls Steam Ahead. We're excited to bring you to the Johnson Space Center today with Emily Matula, who's going to tell us a little bit about what it's like to be an extra-vehicular assistant. Oh, nope, that's not right, is it? An EVA. She's going to tell us what that is, flight controller.
Yeah, so it's actually extravehicular activity. So what does that mean? That is a spacewalk. So anytime you see astronauts outside the ISS, which is the International Space Station, or outside their vehicle, that's what an EVA is. And you probably have heard the term Houston, we have a problem. Well, we are Houston. So we are sitting on console and we are making sure that the astronauts are conducting their EVAs safely. And we are also the ones that help them put their space pants on the day of the EVA. So we're also instructors. So we teach the astronauts how to put on those spacesuits, how to maintenance them, and how to keep themselves safe while they're doing those EVAs. So that's my job in a nutshell. And it is a lot of fun, but I know we're going to talk a little bit more about it in a minute.
So that sounds fantastic. The breadth of what you're doing, from literally learning how to put the spacesuit on to that Houston, we have a problem. So fantastic. I cannot wait to hear more. I do want to ask a couple little questions that have come up from our youths that do participate in the program. And first off, if you could give us a little bit of your background of, where you started. I know you are a native Licking County student who went off and is doing wonderful things right now. So let's kind of start from the beginning and work our way through how you got to Johnson Space Center.
Sure. So, like you mentioned, I originally grew up in Granville, Ohio. I spent basically my entire life there. My parents still live there, and I love it. So, it holds a soft spot in my heart. But unfortunately, didn't stay here for school. I did go to that school up north. I went to University of Michigan for undergrad, where I got my mechanical engineering degree. And then I decided to go to graduate school. So I continued at the University of Michigan in space engineering. And space engineering is more or less how to design and build satellites. So your GPS, your cell phone, cable, even some internet is provided by satellites these days. And which was really awesome to learn about and to understand those systems. But anytime I ask my professors, hey, when are we going to start talking about astronauts? When are we going to talk about humans in space? They said, well, we don't do that at Michigan. And I said, I got to find a place that does that. And that's where I found the University of Colorado. So the University of Colorado in Boulder does bioastronautics, which is the study and support of life in space. So I continued my graduate degree, getting my PhD, my doctorate in bioastronautics at the University of Colorado. And my thesis, or what I was focusing on, was how to keep humans alive and comfortable with algae. So you know that pond scum that we see pretty much everywhere, especially in Ohio. I was looking at how to use the photosynthetic properties of algae to pull out CO2, which we all respire or breathe out, and provide oxygen to the astronauts or the crew members. But because algae grows in water, we can use that water to help control the thermal environment. So how warm or how cool your room is. And so I was looking at basically building a algae-based air conditioning system. So that's what my thesis was looking at. And I finished up with that degree a few years ago, but I loved working with humans in space so much that I needed to find a job that had something to do with humans in space. So I ended up finding this position down here in Houston, Texas, at the Johnson Space Center, where, as I said before, I am instructing astronauts how to do their EVAs, or how to do their spacewalks, and how to put their spacesuit on, and how to do everything safely. And you're going to hear me say that quite a few times, safely, safely, safely. And that's because you are literally putting a person out into the vacuum of space. And so you are purposefully putting them in a very hazardous environment. And so it's our jobs as the flight controllers to make sure that we do that as safely as possible, because we want to make sure that we bring home every crew member.
So one of the things that I love about the Girls Team Ahead program is hearing about all of the different like majors and pathways that people encounter as they move through their career path. And I love that space engineering is something that you were able to find, and then bioastronautics. This is great. These are things that I've never heard of. And that's probably going to trigger an interest for somebody that's watching, which is awesome. And don't worry, I am actually from the state up north, so I'm right there with you
Okay.
here in Ohio. But lots of fun here. So I love your research topic that you were looking at how to keep astronauts alive with algae, and I can imagine that has a lot of really interesting you know implications and transfers to how we're looking at the next steps of space exploration and how we look at plant life growing in space, or terraforming and so forth. So where do you see that maybe as something that moves forward, whether it's something that your research does or where you see that application or your interest in research moving forward from here?
Yeah, so actually, it's funny that you mentioned that. We have a experiment going on right now in the International Space Station, and that's the Veggie Project.
Mhm.
And it is literally a mini greenhouse on the ISS. And so we've grown everything from zinnias, so flowers, to hatch chili pepper plants. That's what's going on right now, as well as some salad greens. And part of the reason that we're doing that is we are realizing that if we are to get to Mars, and we're able to do that quickly and efficiently, we can't take pretty much everything with us, kind of the way you would if you were, say, going on a hiking backpacking trip. We're going to have to either make some stuff along the way, or we're going to have to gather natural resources when we finally get to the surface of Mars. And one aspect of that is food. We are looking at, how much food do you have to take in order to support a multi-year Martian mission? And unfortunately, we just don't have the propulsion systems at this time in order to do that efficiently. So instead, we're looking at, could we grow some of our food either along the way or when we're finally on the surface of Mars? And so doing these experiments on the International Space Station, like the Veggie Project, helps us understand some of those constraints, some of those issues, but just in general, see if it's possible. And so what we're finding is, yes, it is possible. We have successfully grown those zinnia plants. Currently, those hatch chili pepper plants are flowering. And so we're really excited to see the harvest that we get from them. I know we tell the crew members, don't eat any of it because it's a science experiment and we want to, document how much we grow. But I know if I was a crew member, I might be sneaking some tastes here and there. So
So what decides which plants get to grow on the ISS? Because I mean, a sneak snack on a hatch chili might be a little much, but the greens would be good.
yeah. So what we're looking for are plants with high edible biomass ratios. So if you think about a tomato plant, what do you really eat from a tomato plant? Just the tomato. If you think about a head of lettuce, what do you eat from the head of lettuce? Well, you eat the entire thing. And so lettuce has a higher edible biomass ratio than a tomato plant. So we want to make sure that we are growing these very efficient plants, but we also want to make sure that we're growing plants that grow very quickly, because I eat every day. So I need a constant source of nutrition. So going back to that tomato plant, how often are you able to harvest a tomato from a tomato plant? Every couple of months, basically. A head of lettuce, on the other hand, can have a turnaround time of a few weeks. So you can start to kind of figure out and schedule what your planting timeline is going to look like, when your harvest timeline is going to happen. And so you can start to schedule out all these different plants that you're trying to plant.
Very fun. So let's talk a little bit about your career path. So you're still, early in your career path, but so far when we think about where you've gone from, being a student in mechanical engineering and moving into more and more specialized engineering paths, and I'm not sure if there was something between that and landing your current position at Johnson Space Center, but thinking about that pathway, were there challenges that you faced being a woman in a STEAM field, or particularly related to your career challenges simply because you are at the Houston We Have a Problem? So I'm sure that you have, we'll just say, faced many challenges.
I think the one that's probably most impactful that, you know, anybody and maybe even everybody to a certain extent can connect with is I actually have a math difficulty. So I find certain aspects of math very challenging, and especially being in engineering, you are doing a lot of math. And it was something that we didn't really realize until I was later on in school. I, obviously tried very hard in middle school and high school, and got through calculus classes, got through algebra classes. It did take me a little bit longer to understand certain aspects, and it was just the way that my mind approached math. And then it wasn't until college that we figured this out, and so then I was able to take different approaches on, how do I learn math concepts and calculus and everything. And got through all those classes, but it was definitely difficult. And it's one that I am very aware of while I'm doing while I did my research, but then also while I'm doing my job now of, if I'm asked, to calculate something or what have you, I know that I need to write it down on paper. It's very difficult for me to sometimes do figures in my head, so I write it down on paper. I also double check my work, and so it is something that could happen to anybody, and but not letting that necessarily hold you back and trying to find ways around it is, I think, something that everybody can apply to any of these difficulties that they may have.
No, that's absolutely right. And being able to recognize it and find the ways around it are so key for any challenge that you might face
Mhm.
for any career, definitely. So, I mean, speaking of the fact that you recognized math was challenging for you when you were younger, but you also, I think, recognized maybe a little bit of a nugget of your career inspiration and your love for space science and exploration when you were younger too. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how you got inspired, or just what supported you along the way?
Sure. Yeah. So growing up where I did, and I think a lot of the viewers can appreciate this, um, I didn't really have a lot of light pollution. And so I was able to take advantage of that, basically go out in the middle of the night and just look up at the stars and just see the Milky Way and constellations. And it was fantastic. The other inspiration that I had, or push, I guess you could say, would be my dad. So there are two meteor showers per year that happen pretty consistently, and there's one in August and there's one in December. And the one in August was fun because it's nice out. You wake up in the middle of the night. You get to go out and look at the meteors, but the ones in December really stick out in my mind because I remember getting woken up in the middle of the night, you know, boots and heavy coat on top of pajamas and going out into the front yard and having my dad lay out a piece of cardboard, you know, from the recycling bin for us to lay on so that we weren't on the cold ground, but, you know, watching for all of the meteor and the meteor shower is just something that sticks so firmly in my mind. But just remember being very inspired by that and just in awe of seeing these little white things whizzing across the sky and realizing, you know, it's basically chunks of rock and ice and everything that could hit us at any moment, but you know, our atmosphere is protecting us, and you know, asking questions about that, and then you know, trying to find why and how, and going down that path.
It is fun how those little instances can just stand so clear and crisp in your
Yeah,
mind.
right.
I can just picture it myself. So
Very cold.
yes, very cold, wonderful clear skies though. Yes.
Exactly.
So let's move kind of back into the future and think a little bit about what is it that you still hope to accomplish as you are in your current position and as you work with NASA. What are some of the goals that you have that we might be able to kind of see a little bit into the future here for you?
Well, it's probably no surprise that I have applied to the astronaut selection this past year and the year before that. But it is highly competitive. There are plenty of awesome candidates that apply every single year, or well, every single time that they come out. They really only come out about once every 4 years at this point. I wasn't selected the last time, wasn't selected in the most recent, and that's okay. There's still plenty of chances. So I hope that in the near future, you know, in 4 years, that I'll have the opportunity to apply again. And then maybe another time after that yet. So we'll see. But that's kind of, you know, that lofty goal that I would like to someday attain. And I think having the long history of Ohioan astronauts, you know, helps keep me inspired that, hey, you know, there's got to be something about the state that keeps so many people looking skyward. And so I just hope to one day be another one of those, you know, Ohioans that someday go to space. So that's probably the first and foremost. But goals that are, you know, a little closer to ground, I guess you could say, it would probably be I am a private pilot. I would love to get my instrument rating. I think that would make me a safer flyer because that basically means I could fly in bad weather. I also really enjoy working on cars. So at some point, I would love to try and refurbish an older vehicle. At this point in time, you know, haven't picked one out yet, but we'll see what happens in the future. In terms of a career, so the flight controller process, at least for EVA, because like I said before, you are literally putting a human out into this hazardous environment. That training program takes upwards of 9 years. So I'm only year 2 in that 9-year training program. So I will, you know, be continuing to go through that flight controller training. At this point in time, I am an instructor. So while I am continuing on with that flight controller training, I will be instructing crew members in the meantime. So instructing those astronauts on how to put their spacesuit on and things like that. So I will get to basically advance in one half of the career while also just continuing on supporting in the other half of the career. So
Well, I don't know about NASA, but I feel like your EVA experience just makes you the even better candidate because you already know how to put the pants on, right?
Exactly, exactly.
Well, it's
Yeah.
always good to have goals that are both near and far.
Right.
So we'll just baby steps as we get along the way.
Right.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that with you. It was really exciting to hear about what you do at NASA as well as how you got there. And I would love to close out with anything we missed or any advice that you have for young women who are maybe taking their first steps on the path or maybe even currently taking engineering classes and are looking for experiences that might deliver them right up to the Johnson Space Center up at the stars.
Yeah, yeah. So I thought about this because I saw it as one of the questions that may come up, and it was one of what would you tell yourself, and what would you tell yourself, um, a few years back, and what would you tell students about the same age? And I think the thing that kept resonating with me was be brave, because it can be so easy to talk yourself, and this still happens today for me, talk yourself out of something. Oh, I can't do that, or ooh, that might be too difficult, or ooh, this may not happen the way I think it should happen, or I want it to happen. um, but I think the reason we all talk ourselves out of these experiences or these, classes or opportunities is more or less because we're looking at something that may be just too big for that particular moment. So, being brave and realizing that, yes, you can do it, but then also trying to break that down into more manageable and easy steps. Case in point, right now I'm thinking I would like to do the Houston Marathon, and I have never run 26 miles before. And I keep, getting overwhelmed by it. But, be brave, realize you're not going to go do that tomorrow, but break it down into more manageable steps. So I think the same thing can happen for, a math class. If you want to go do algebra or something like that, don't think, oh gosh, I have to do all of the algebra class in one session. Break it down into more manageable steps and realize you're going to take it one class at a time, and that's okay. So I think same thing can apply here. And but yes, keep saying yes to these opportunities and keep being brave.
Wonderful. Thank you, because I think that those are fantastic words of encouragement, and I really hope that what our young women really can take out of everything that you've said is it really is take that next step and to not get discouraged by big goals and big dreams and to just take each step along the way and take that direction. So I really hope that everyone is inspired to seek out the stars and to follow their dreams. And to know that even when you're facing a challenge, such as the ones that we've talked about, there's always a way that you can find your own solution to it and keep moving forward. So Emily, thank you so much for joining us, and I can't wait for our viewers to get to know you and a little bit about what you do. And we'll see everybody next time on Girls Steam Ahead.
Welcome back to Girls Steam Ahead. In today's session, we have Meredith Baker joining us, and she's going to tell us a little bit about her experience at a wildlife refuge in Alaska and how that relates to what she is studying. So take it away, Meredith.
Right, so my name is Meredith Baker, and I am a senior at The Ohio State University studying ecology and evolution. I also have a minor in environmental science. And this summer, I was an environmental education intern for the Kenai National Wildlife Refuge. So I spent May through August there, and I'm planning on going back February through October of next year.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about that internship experience and how it fits? I mean, obviously, wildlife refuge, evolution, ecology, perfect match. But what got you really excited about this opportunity for what it is that you want to be able to explore?
Yeah, so right now I am in a really big transition period with being a senior, finishing up my bachelor's degree, and I'm really trying to figure out kind of what my career is going to look like and what really best fits my interests. So I was really excited about this position because I got to be a camp counselor for about 4 weeks at the refuge, but I also got to explore a lot of the different career paths that the refuge can host. So I was a camp counselor at the Dawes Arboretum in 2019, and then in 2020 I got to do my own summer research project on ecology of plants. So I'm kind of in between if I want to do research in ecology or if I would like to do education as my career path. And with this last summer, I have kind of figured out that science communication and conservation with environmental education is really important to me, and that is really what I'm passionate about. So that was really special to me this summer.
So I can imagine how all of that just ignited a spark right now, right, as you're finishing out your Bachelor's of Science. And I would love to kind of follow that path backwards, right? So you're in this sweet spot right now where you're getting to have these amazing experiences, and speaking to my heart as a former evolutionary ecologist, right? And what types of experiences, even before when you were a camp counselor at Dawes, and even before you had in your field, you can really see the paths that you took to get to where you are right now, and we can get to where you want to go too. But what about looking backwards to yourself when you were in high school, in middle school, or even before, down to really young Meredith? What experiences did you have, or maybe even somebody who inspired you or supported you to, hey, take that next step and see how you got into the life sciences in general?
Absolutely. So I attended the Dawes camp myself as a child. So I did that, I think, in middle school and maybe end of elementary school. And that really was kind of my first memory that I can think of being outside and doing science and really, really loving it. So throughout high school and middle school, I kind of really wanted to do STEM. I knew I wanted to do science in some way, but I didn't know what that would look like. Especially in high school, I thought that the only way I can do STEM is if I'm a doctor or if I am an engineer. And so I picked the engineering route, or kind of combined the two when I went to college for a biomedical engineering degree, because,
Interesting choice.
Right. It combines the two, and at the time I really loved math, and I just wanted to do science. And then I got to Ohio State, and engineering was just not for me. It was just a little bit too intense, and there was a lot of math involved. And college math is hard. So that was not for me, so I decided, if I'm not going to be an engineer, then I have to be a doctor.
Because those are the only choices,
Those are the only choices. And so I took the biology pre-med route, and this is within my first year. I changed my major 3 times within my first year. And so now I'm biology pre-med, doing pre-health sciences, and I go to a medical school, undergrad, I don't know how to describe it, a meeting just to kind of learn about medical school, and I was like, I'm gonna have to be in school forever. And that's okay, that is a really great path for some people, but that was not for me. And one piece of advice that my academic advisor gave me was to look at courses that you would think are really fun. And so I looked through the arts and sciences college, their course list, and I found one class that was the dynamics of dinosaurs. And I thought, that is the coolest class. How can you take a major that is that cool, that you can learn about dinosaurs, that you can learn about climate change and all of the life sciences? And that's when I found ecology and evolution. And that was a really big turning point, because I realized that your career and the science field that you're in can really connect to what you're passionate about with your hobbies. So I really loved being outdoors, and I really loved animals and nature, and connecting that to my major was really important. And so then I kind of thought that the only career path from that was to be a professor and to do research. So I got myself into a research lab, the Hovick lab at Ohio State. And my mentor, Leah, was fantastic. I was gonna work on a project with her, volunteering in the lab, working with soil and different types of plants. And within that time at the lab, I ended up doing my own research project, but that also wasn't for me. And I realized that what I liked about the research project was talking to Leah and talking to people in the lab. I loved talking about the science. I loved talking to people about what we were doing and kind of why it mattered. And when you're working in the lab, you get few and far between chances to kind of talk to people about what you're doing. You're really digging into the science on your own, and that taught me a lot about myself. And so then I kind of looked towards science communication, that, if I really like talking to people in the lab, maybe I should be talking to people about science. And I kind of applied to this position on a whim. I thought, there's no way that I'm gonna get this position in Alaska. I'm sure there's thousands of people that apply for this. And so when I got the email from my supervisor, I thought it was a scam. So that was pretty special. And this summer, I really ignited a spark within myself, and I found this passion within science communication and with talking to kids and people about science.
So that sounds fascinating for me, in part because what you're describing is what I think so many people feel when they maybe even approach choosing a major, that it's like engineering is that you're an engineer, and that there are not that there are so many different types of ways of applying not just your background, but also career paths. We have another engineer that we interviewed that went through so many different types of engineering that I never even heard of. But it's the same with life sciences, right?
Yep.
You go into biology to be a professor or a doctor.
Yep.
That's the only choice. And I mean, I went through a very similar path because I did a life sciences. I wasn't really interested in medicine. I loved research, but then I started thinking about how, not necessarily how we communicated, all of that's a part of it, but I was looking at it through the lens of how we learn it.
Yeah.
And that's how I got into the education side. And so there is so much more that you can do with a love for science and a love for STEM in general, and how we go about that. So really, I think, very resonating path with what a lot of people go through, and not even just within the life sciences, but with any discipline, right? Recognizing what you love, and because you're going to spend a lot of time studying it, a lot of time doing it, and you have to have a passion, a little, that matches that. So great experiences there. Now, I mean this in the nice way, but the way you've described this, it's been this almost Cinderella tale of how you've gotten to do what you love.
Right.
So are there challenges that you could share, or a specific moment in time where you were had a difficulty, and how you got through that, or who helped you get through that to help cement your path and what you want to do?
Absolutely. So one challenge that I think that arise with a lot of people kind of in the life sciences is just getting to where you want to go. A lot of the time, if you're choosing an engineering degree or a pre-med, a degree in medicine, or going to grad school, getting your PhD, it's a long game. There are a lot of years ahead of you, and that was really scary. So really understanding that this passion is something that will fuel me throughout what I want to do, and recognizing that my path isn't linear. If you choose one path, that doesn't mean you have to stay on it for the rest of your life. It's a major, it's not jail. So you can really dive into what you love regardless of how you get there. As long as you are happy with where you are at the moment, and if that needs to change, that's okay. And I think that was a difficult thing for me to accept, that, just because I chose engineering to start doesn't mean I'm any less, and changed it, doesn't mean I'm any less of a scientist or any less of even an engineer. I apply what I learned my first year in engineering in my job now, and I apply what I learned in biology with my job now. So really recognizing that, like, you're a human being, you can change your major, it's okay, it'll be fine, and you'll find what you need to do.
I think that's a great message and a great, experience to have to go through, to know that you can be thrilled and excited about what you have in your experiences. And it is hard when you had your mind set on something and then feel like, that was wrong, so being able to acknowledge that. So let's talk about Meredith in the future, right?
Yes.
So you're excited, you're getting to get out of your undergraduate degree and move forward in your path. I mean, where do you see yourself in 5 or 20 years?
Yeah.
What exciting things do you have in store for us?
In the next few years, I'm gonna spend, a year again at the refuge. And then when I get back, I really hope to get my master's in education, because I really do think that education is where I'm supposed to be, to teach science and to help others learn it. And to learn it for myself. I think that is a critical part of what I want my career path to look like, is to keep learning and help others learn as well. So within the next 5 years, I'd like to really get some, experience under my belt with environmental education, whether that's being interns at different places or whether that is finding, a permanent position somewhere where I can be like this environmental education specialist assistant, one step underneath. But a lot of times that's kind of hard to find, especially when there aren't very many places that have positions like that. So I will also, maybe go teach somewhere, but then what I want to do long term is teach science. I want to help learn, I want to learn myself, and that is just kind of at the core of what I want to do.
That sounds great. So what I want to know then is, with that in mind, what's the maybe one piece of advice that you have that you want to keep in mind for not only yourself, but also for somebody who is thinking about finding a passion and taking those steps to being open to switching those majors or discovering what is really out there? Because a lot of what we see through these conversations is I discover careers that I didn't even know existed, or paths that different women have taken that are just so fascinating. So what's that advice that not only are you taking as you are still in this beginning steps of your paths, but going back a few years, that you think, hey, if I had heard this before my freshman year in college, how would it have helped you?
I think that the one piece of advice is to really listen to your gut and to listen to your heart. If you have a passion for slugs and you love slugs, then dive into that. Really learn about what you are passionate about. Really dig into what you feel is best. And then if that seems to change, let's say you research slugs for 1 year, and then after that 1 year, you're like, I actually don't like slugs. That is okay, Listen to your heart and listen to what your instincts are telling you, because you don't know what is just around the corner. And, like I said, be willing to change, be willing to accept the fact that this might not be the right path, and that's okay, you'll get there.
Great advice. And I just wanted to say thank you again for sharing the start of your journey with us. Not only, where you've been, but also looking forward to seeing where you go from here, and doing great things with helping youth learn, understand, and communicate science.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And we'll see everybody next time on Girls Steam Ahead.
Thank you so much.